Wow, Billy. Episode 72 in the bag. Batman Begins and developmental trauma. What are people going to learn in this episode?
Yeah, really heavy, but probably the most important topic we've covered for all families because there's a way that we can protect kids from these experiences and provide, some really helpful practical strategies to do that, and then pathways that we can walk and journey through with kids that have experience that's really helpful. So, yeah, I think this is one that's for everyone. Even
definitely.
if you think, my child's not at risk of that.
No, interesting to understand how you can go down the different paths and how you avoid it. And you do provide some great tips in it. I think it's also just a quick shout out on a slightly lighter note, is a massive thank you to our brand new partners at AV1. This is huge. We are being recorded. Hopefully it's not too HD, Billy, and it's just not too punched in. I might reveal some lines, maybe get some work done to make me look a bit better in the post-production. But it's an amazing setup and the guys have done an amazing job, and we're so thrilled to have them on board as a partner.
Yes, thank you guys, and we'll explain that a bit more in the app.
Fantastic. Enjoy the episode, guys. Make sure you get your questions in for part 2. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Billy, a developmental paediatrician.
And I'm Nick, a developing parent.
We're going to use scenes from iconic movies to talk about how we best support our kids.
This is Pop Culture Parenting.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.
Good morning, Dr. Billy Garvey. How are you?
Good morning, Nick. I am especially chirpy this morning.
Why are you especially chirpy this morning?
Well, we've changed our kit a bit. So we've got a new setup. So
Yes.
There's some exciting stuff happening, and I'll tell the story of why. But we are now being filmed via 3 cameras. One that includes a wide that
Wow.
we've just realised captures legs.
Does capture legs, Billy.
So-
And they're going to see yours.
Shorts was a bad choice. Legs akimbo over here. So it's really exciting. I think it's probably what we know. A lot of people are coming in and starting to listen that haven't kind of journeyed with us from the start now.
Yep.
So it's probably good to just revisit very quickly why we do this and the story of it.
Go on.
And then we'll talk about why we now have an increased group of allies. People will probably know this. I'm a developmental paediatrician. I'm very fortunate to work at one of the biggest and best resourced children's hospitals in the world. That also has one of the best research centres in the world. Amazing team. We all care about how we improve the lives of kids and work really hard. But I've often thought there's a missing bit. How do we get reach? And you and I, 2 years ago, were walking around the block carrying 2 little kids, thinking about our interests in this, and decided that we might have a crack at this podcasting
Yes.
game. And
This caper.
It's been a lot of fun, lots of fun, and it's really interesting the difference between us because I live this.
Go on.
Well, yes. Well, I live this every day. The topic that we're going to talk about today is a really heavy one, and I'm motivated by almost every family I see towards this podcast. I love what I do clinically. I've been working with families for 20 years, and it's tens of thousands of kids that I've met. And what I'm trying to do in clinic is what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to convert all the science that, 14 fun years of uni have taught me into something that's helpful. Now, I actually think you are an integral component of that, but the thing is there's so much work around this. My dance card's pretty full, but I still squeeze in a lot of this stuff. So what we've done is built this community around us. Best thing about the podcast, all the listeners, all that stuff.
100%. Why we do it.
100% why we do it. And it's also a really important thing that people will often ask, how do we contribute? You just share it. That's how you contribute. There's a reason there is no ads on this. It's just to give back to the community. It's different to kind of other things that are, selling a course online or whatever. We're just trying to help. And the vision of this sits within a social enterprise that's really how do we shift and improve the trajectories of all the kids in our communities.
Yep.
This is one way to do that. There's a lot of, I feel quite hypocritical, and maybe that will be my Griswold, is that I'm kind of burning time with my family to do this, but love it so much. But this is the shout out there's a group of people that sit behind this, and you know this as well. I meet almost every week with people who have expertise in media that meet and advise us, that they give up their time for at business. But now we have another group. So this is a special shout out to AV1, which is a audio-visual event production company. They have an in-house content team that are led by an amazing creative director called Kai, and they have phenomenally dedicated a number of people with a lot of expertise that are now going to help us produce the podcast, which is amazing. It's quite funny. I think I cut over 300 videos, and then Abby did maybe the third one, and it went to 160,000 views very quickly. So I tried not to take that personally, but it's it's just an amazing privilege to have those guys involved. They have been following the podcast and have reached out. They are what's called a B Corp, which is kind of what is really powerful about the whole podcast. A B Corp is a certification that's quite hard to get that means you're a company that gives back to the community. AV1, I think there's about 7,000 around the world now that are going, we want to do what we do really well, but we want to make the world a better place. And so this is their contribution to that. So it also means that we're going to go onto YouTube.
Oof.
So we realised that...
I hope you're ready, Google.
Yes. That the biggest platform for listening to podcasts is actually YouTube. So we're going to go on there because we're about reach and how do we get the most help to the most people.
Awesome.
So you'll start seeing more of us. We're going to have to be a bit more conscious.
In more places.
In more places. And please share it. There is also an option if people find that YouTube is helpful and people view it. We have recorded almost the entire back catalogue on our phones that we are happy to think about, how do we get them up, because that content is there and would be quite funny to watch and hopefully helpful to see the visuals as well. But do you know the funniest thing that I found in spending hours and hours looking at myself? When I'm tired, I get a lazy eye, and I never knew that until my late 30s.
Wow. What happens to me?
Mate, you just get better.
Like a fine wine, Billy.
Yeah.
Except a bit corked.
So
vinegary.
Yeah. So no, it's amazing. So yeah, we're going to be up on that platform.
It is amazing. And just quickly, it's nice to walk in here and believe it or not, I know it's probably pretty hard to believe for the listeners, but there hasn't been a studio of people standing around us filming us for the last 2 years. It's actually just been a couple of smartphones mounted on... What, Billy? What have we had them mounted to?
Yeah, well, you've amazingly figured out how to mount it with blue tack and books.
Blue tack and dumbbells and thatched it together. So it's amazing where we are today. As I sit here, I'm almost nervous. It's like the first podcast again, Billy. There's that much kit at the moment. It's fantastic. So
I think the official first podcast, we actually forgot to press record.
Well, yeah, there was some gold captured and we went to re-listen to it. We used to gather around my smartphone and then... I was like, I've got something to tell you, Billy. I didn't record the session. And we thought we'd just lost like an Oscar-winning documentary. That's exactly how you felt.
It was the best one we've ever done.
The best one we've ever done, apparently. Yeah. Us gathered around a smartphone at your desk on a Saturday night. It's, folklore.
Yeah.
Oh, well. And here we are.
So, so massive shout out to AV1 and the amazing team that are behind them. Now... Heavy topic that I just have to preface this. It's possibly the heaviest topic we've done. We're going to talk about developmental trauma. This is the most common thing that I see in clinic. Now, we'll go deeper into it, but I'm constantly reminded every week of how we need to do better as a community in this. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but I just want to do a shout out and say that we know there's a lot of people overseas that listen. In Australia, Lifeline's probably the best place to go if this does make things tough. 13, 11, 14 is the number. Overseas, there will be similar things, but the most important thing in all of this is that reach out. So don't hold this stuff. This can be hard stuff to think about. It's important stuff to think about. We're all trying to be the best parents we can. A lot of our own childhood experiences come into that, but this is hopefully going to be helpful. I really want a lot of questions to come in that will dive deeper into it, but just know that this is what we're trying to do is build a community that all comes around us. So we'll talk about that in the context of it, but it's going to be tough to talk about. But on to try and lighten it slightly, Griswold's Winslow's.
Yeah, plenty of this week. What do you want to go with first?
We'll end on a high. Give me the Grizzy.
Hey. Don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
Mine's a quick little one. So I messaged you early last week saying, Billy, have you got the phone number for Mensa? I need to enroll my daughter in there because she's just gotten through the night without wetting the bed for the first time because Dad forgot to put the nappy on. And you were like, oh, yeah, joke, ha, 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 yes. And I said, yes, all fine. So I can't wait. I think we're out of nappies. So the next night, Mum put a nappy on, said, oh, I'm not sure we're there yet. And I was like, I think we are. So the next night, I took the nappy off. And sure enough, middle of the night, baby in the room, wet the bed. So I thought I was out of the gate and I was about ready to throw the change table in every nappy I had. And I think I remember seeing my best mates do that at one stage, just putting the change table out on the front lawn and putting the last nappy in the bin. And I was like, can't wait for that day. And I jumped the gun, Billy, and ended up with a fair Griswold in the middle of the evening, baby in bed, and anyone that, wet the mattress without the protector on there, it's a bit of a disaster. So rough start.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because you put your failures behind you once you think you've made those milestones, and you go, I'll never have to do that again.
No, it's a lesson in baby steps and a lesson in coming back and doing the right things and no one getting too stressed about the situation. So we had a laugh, but I was laughing when I said to you, oh, look,
Mensa.
I don't even know what Mensa really is. I just say to Billy, I think my daughter's ready for Mensa. And you're always like, do you know what it is? I'm like, not really.
Yeah, I know. No, it does takes me back to, But anyway, no, it's my Griswold, I've been living this since Charlie was born. So, Annalise is amazing. She does 95% of the parenting. And when Charlie, my 3-month-old now, came into the world, we were like, cool, let's divide and conquer the sleep stuff. 2-bedroom place. Annalise is in the room with Charlie. So obviously feeding overnight. And it was like, Billy, you go in with the 2-year-old with Evie. So we bought this lovely bed that your partner suggested, actually, a beautiful, environmentally friendly single. Yes, you have. Yes, the night that Annalise was in labour. So we bought this bed and we're like, this is awesome. And I think about 1 week in of Evie, my 2-year-old, going from sleeping through the night, which is a fluke, not because we're translating that evidence well. But anyway, once I went in that room, she would wake up after a couple of hours of sleep and just sleep on top of me. And I was like, this is awesome. I love it. Was this, I'm hardly getting any time with her. I was like, this is great. And then Annalise, after a couple of weeks, I was like, that's not happening anymore. I'm sick of dealing with you and Evie being grumpy all day because you've hardly slept.
Playing all night.
And so, I've been kicked out into the living room on a mattress that I sleep on the floor for the last 3 months. So the so-called, sleep expert is...
How's that going?
It's funny. And it's really funny because I'm not getting enough sleep, but it is this beautiful, funny thing that Evie just shouts at, 5, 6 a.m. in the morning, just, Daddy, Daddy. But she doesn't even so I'll come in the room and then I'll go to pick her up and I'm genuinely really happy to see her because I don't get, it's great time with her. And she's like, whoa, well, hang on, I need to stretch. And so she does the stretch and stuff. And I'm like, I'm definitely the soft one. That's just whatever you need me to do, I'll do. So it's it's pretty funny. And what about give me your Winslow?
Oh, my Winslow goes to my neighbours. Who this week
gives the great man.
Oh, sorry.
Lead us in.
I don't object to fun. I love fun. In fact, I'm the grand funk master of fun.
Mine just goes to my neighbours. So my neighbours, I won't name them because they're my neighbours, but they have fallen pregnant with their first. And I am thrilled for them. I'm also really impressed because they've been listening to my kids for a year or two now, yelling and screaming in the backyard and me yelling and screaming along with them. And I'm like, they love the madness and the chaos of it all. So, and I'm impressed that they're hearing everything and getting all the sleep that they usually get. They're like, I'm going to double down and we're going to have our own kids and have a great time with it. And they've been really fun about it. So I said to them, guys, this is so good. I'm so thrilled for you. And it's we're going to have a little bubba in about 2 weeks.
Oh,
so I really snuck past us all winter and then I saw her and I was like,
Yeah.
And I was like, congratulations.
And there's lots of things you love, but a little baby is definitely...
dude. Yeah, I do. I think, the start, they're so small, they're so precious. And, I do love, rose-colored glasses now, Billy. I'm well past I've got a 3.5-year-old or whatever is my youngest, but I do love the start. I think the start's amazing when you got that little one.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the beautiful thing is, like, I got this, and this is probably why you're here. You just make that time really great, and you're really supportive, and yeah. So it's great to hear that. I don't think I have a Winslow, but
that's sort of a fortnight.
Yeah. That's sort of a fortnight where my Winslow will be that I can finally get back to a lot of the emails, thanks to the guys that are taking over the video production, because I can't even get back to the emails of people saying, "Hey, I'll help you get to all those emails." that's how I'm like, as you said, everything gets read, but I'm like, God. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to the Winslow that's on the horizon.
Fantastic.
Now, talk to me about Batman Begins.
So good. When you originally said, we're going to do, I think you said we're going to do the first Batman, and I was like, oh, Michael Keaton, Jack Nicklaus, interesting. I don't know about the parenting stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people would say, what's your favourite Batman movie?
Probably Dark Knight, I think, because of Heath.
Yeah, highest grossing. And yeah, the one we're doing, Batman Begins, is the fourth most successful of them. But yeah, third is the original Batman, Michael Keaton. Great movie. The problem is that I have to pick a movie that has a bit more depth than the original Batman, because it doesn't really go into Batman's story, and that's what I want to do. But the original Batman, it doesn't really talk about his origin. And this was kind of the first superhero origin story. Like, this changed. Yeah, you try and think of another big superhero origin, as in, one of the Superman movies talks about Krypton or whatever, but it doesn't go into the
Krypton.
depth of, yeah. So it's it's a really beautiful movie, but yeah, did you enjoy the rewatch?
Yeah, I enjoyed the rewatch. It's less of a Christopher Nolan film than all the subsequent couple. Like, he really gets to be Christopher Nolan in, because now you've got to be watching the whole trilogy. Yeah. Yeah. I actually said to you when I was watching this one, so watching Batman Begins, the one we're reviewing.
Yeah.
Do we review it?
I think that gets us out of the legalities of
okay, yeah. So as we review the content of this film, yes, I said to you, I called you straight away. I was like, there's something wrong with the upload to, I was watching it on Stan or whatever. I'm like, it's all back to front and not in the right place. And you're like, no, Nolan does. This is what he does. He jumps around. I was like, because I don't remember it starting here. And I watched it on 3 different platforms trying to get it. Anyway, great rewatch.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it where it's presumably, I don't know if they ever say, but it's Mongolia or China, wherever they go. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
So much of it's there as well at the start.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And he's so young in it, Bale. He looks so young. Like when he plays the college kid part of it with the college kid haircut, I'm like, God, he's really youthful. Anyway, loved it. Really great rewatch. Forgot Katie Holmes was in it as well.
Yeah.
Because I always think of Maggie Gyllenhaal as the...
Yes. And so they were a bit worried about Katie Holmes being in this movie, that it would impact the success.
I thought she was great.
Definitely. There was a bit of criticism of the lack of chemistry between the two of them through the reviewers at the time. But yeah, everyone said Bale was amazing and just really sunk into the role, which he was. Everyone talks about, his gravelly voice. There was a recent comment on one of the clips we put up about, Billy, you're about 1 octave off Mongolian throat singing there. And whenever I hear that, someone said that to me on a podcast recently, and I just dropped the tone of my voice even lower. I was like, do I really have a deep voice? But, his voice is so iconic. He's a phenomenal in the role. But do you know why they were worried about Katie Holmes?
Why?
So 2005, famous for a lot of reasons, this movie came out. First year of YouTube, which is obviously going to have a big uptick in viewership now that we're going on there. And
poor Joe Rogan, now that we're there.
What else happened in 2005? Might be related to Katie Holmes.
I was about to say I went to Europe for the first time. Went first overseas in my first time in my life. He married Tom Cruise, perhaps?
Yeah, and how'd the world find out about that?
I think, I can't remember. Was Tom potentially on Oprah?
So right before the movie came out, Cruise is jumping on the couch, talking about...
What a scene.
Yeah. And so it was this iconic pop culture moment that they were really worried that it was going to deviate away from her legitimacy as a great actor in this movie.
Yeah.
So they were nervous about it. But it's quite funny to think that, that was such a long time ago. And so I think it's a really powerful movie. Now, I'm going to talk really deeply about the movie, but do you know this? Do you know the history of Batman? Because it's really...
I know the history of Oh no, I don't. I was about to say the young character. No, I don't know. DC comic from
Yeah. So it was initially, I think,
30s,
Detective
40s or
Comics that
something?
became DC. Yes, yeah. So 38 Superman came out.
Yeah.
He was the first superhero.
Yep.
And they kind of realised these two guys, I think Bob Kane and someone Finger, in made up this iconic character because someone said you got to do something like Superman because it's just taking off.
Gotcha.
And so a year later, Batman came out.
Okay.
Now, what's the iconic thing about Batman?
He has more superpowers.
Yes, that's the most iconic thing. What else? What does he never do?
I can't remember.
Well, he never kills anyone, does he?
No.
So he's
Yeah,
very
okay.
much like that's the line that I can't cross.
And yes.
You know,
true.
that's what makes me different. And we see this in this movie. That's, you know, Ra's al Ghul is like, you've got to take this guy out. He's a criminal. And he's like, that's what makes me different. And that's what makes us different from them.
Yes.
Now, Batman originally wasn't like that.
Oh, he
Batman was a vigilante that went to the end. But do
Punisher.
you know why they changed him? Why did his whole narrative change? You won't. I'd be phenomenally impressed if you do. So in the 50s, an American psychiatrist came out and said comic books are ruining kids' lives. That's the reason there's juvenile delinquency. That's the reason they're all violent and all those things. And there was a Congress inquest into comic books and the impact it had on teenagers.
Wow.
And the guys that were writing Batman said, we better pull back a bit on the, take everyone out stuff. So so that's this really interesting thing that we've talked about this through the podcast, the cultural influences that can have on the way that we raise our kids.
Yes.
And it's quite funny that, 80 years ago, a child psychiatrist came out and stopped comic book, character Batman from being this kind of vigilante that took it to the end. So it's this really interesting story. Now, this movie is really powerful because a couple of reasons. It sensationalizes developmental trauma. And I'm going to talk about what developmental trauma is, but we see this. And I remember watching this for a long time and just being empowered. And I was like, I'm going to get up tomorrow and I'm going to go out there and do this stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And this is, I've got to always balance how much I share my own stuff because I can't make the podcast all about me, unfortunately. But yeah, I still remember watching this, me and my little brother, place to get robbed a few times and we'd be like, this is what we're going to do. We knew the older kids down the road that kept robbing us and all this stuff. And that kind of reactivity is what we see in our clinics, that kind of justice, act out, and this is what this movie does. And if you look at a deeper level, it actually has a great message in it. But superficially, you could be fooled into thinking, how great is Batman? He's going out and taking down crime,
Yeah.
But what he's actually not doing is dealing with his developmental trauma.
So if he dealt with his developmental trauma, there'd be no Batman?
There'd be no Batman.
Ooh. Okay.
But I would hope that Bruce Wayne deserves to have his developmental trauma dealt with.
Yeah.
Totally. I know you know that. Final bit of pop culture fact. Do you know why he's called Bruce Wayne?
No, because I know the shark in Jaws is called Bruce, but sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, after Spielberg's lawyer.
Spielberg's lawyer.
But no, so the Wayne you won't know. No. That's one of the founding fathers was Anthony Wayne. And so
founding fathers of
America was in a big War of Independence, iconic military guy was this guy called Anthony Wayne. So that's where the Wayne came from. Mm-hmm. The Bruce, we've done a movie that has the guy in it.
That has the guy in it?
That it's named after.
Bruce Willis? No.
I'm
joking. No.
You fought for Wallace. Now fight for me.
Oh, Thingo the Bruce.
Robert the Bruce.
Robert the Bruce.
So that's why he's Bruce Wayne.
Gotcha.
His first name is after Robert the Bruce, the iconic Scottish king.
The Bruce.
So they wanted this really powerful name. Now, the interesting thing about developmental trauma and why this movie is really powerful is what's Superman's alter ego? What's Superman's?
Clark Kent.
Yeah. And who's the real person? Is it Superman or is it Clark Kent?
Superman.
Who is he really?
He's Superman.
Yeah.
I
understand what you're saying, but he is. But his true person. He loves Lois Lane. He's got a legitimate relationship with her. He has all these friends. No. It's totally. I set you up a bit there, but he has this legitimate relationship. Yep. He functions well in the world as a human. He puts on the persona of Superman so that he protects the identity of those he cares for.
Sure.
Who's the true persona of Batman? Bruce Wayne or Batman? This movie tells
Batman.
us. Yeah.
Yeah,
Why?
because in this movie you can see he plays the playboy to mislead everyone.
But it's not who he is it?
No.
Yeah. And
He's
he sees
definitely-
he gets stuck, doesn't he, as the
Yeah.
gorgeous supermodel swimming in the pool lobby. And Katie Holmes comes past and he's like, this is not who I am.
Not who I am. Yeah.
But we only get snippets of who he is. But what he's done is he's taken his developmental trauma and he's forced all of it into his fight response.
Gotcha.
He's angry and he's reactive. Now, I see this in clinic. I saw a kid this week
Yeah.
who is a gorgeous kid.
Yeah.
He hasn't lived with his mum wants him back home. He can't live with his mum because of how violent he's been. His mum is trying to get him back. And he has experienced so much developmental trauma that he just is in fight mode all the time. Now, this gorgeous kid, I sat there with the mum who's doing an amazing job. And she said, yeah, we're learning what each of us need because of what's happened. I need to know what's going on for him and when he's not with me, where is he, so I know he's safe. My daughter needs the yelling and fighting not to happen in the house. And what he needs, this is the mum said this, what he needs is for the past not to constantly come up and haunt him.
Okay. Can you tell me what developmental trauma is?
Yeah, totally. Now, the amazing thing about this kid, I'll put it into context, I promise. He corrected his mum and said, no, I don't mind when the past comes up. It's just when I've understood why it's come up and confirmed it and said, I get it, I can't hear about it any more than that. And I was like, wow, this kid's a teenager and he's able to articulate and reflect in the moment with all the trauma he's had.
Okay.
Now, the thing he does, and I'll come back to him when I've explained developmental trauma, what developmental trauma is, it is an experience that you have as a child and as you're developing that traumatizes you. Now, what traumatizes you is anything that causes a lasting reaction in your feelings, your behaviors, or your emotions, or your reactions that is unhelpful and dysfunctional. Now, this kid has had developmental trauma, and what his experience is, the other day, he came into my clinic with a black eye. He was all busted up. He'd been in a punch-up at school, and he said, I knew those 4 guys wanted to fight me. And I went into the bathroom to fight them. And he said, everyone would tell me to walk away. Everything in my body was telling me to go towards them because his response to stress is fight. He loses all of his higher functioning, all of the trauma he's experienced gets triggered, and he just acts out.
Okay. And for most of us, it's flight, but for him, it's fight.
Yeah, but they're both dysfunctional responses in that setting. So I still remember the first time I stood up to one of my mum's boyfriends and how powerful it felt. And I had this rush of power. And that's a thing I still struggle with because when I'm stressed, I feel that surge coming in me because my body is hypersensitive to stress and that's how it acts out. So what we know is that kids who, especially in the first few years of life, who experience developmental trauma, the stress overwhelms their developing brain. And what they look for is predictability. Now, stress is helpful. Stress is helpful. Stress is the reason that you go, cool, I'm under the pump at work, I've got to lift my game, because you do it off a secure base. If you don't do it off a secure base, or if you sit with stress all the time, it will overwhelm you and you will see stress everywhere. You will avoid it. You will act out. You'll be reactive.
Gotcha.
And that's the problem with stress. Now, kids who experience developmental trauma, which is 70 to 80% of adults in the world have experienced some form of developmental trauma. In our clinics, it's about 90%. They were more likely to have adult mental illness. They're more likely to have adult physical illness because it increases their chance of cardiovascular problems, diabetes, other forms of chronic illness. They're more likely to have dysfunctional relationships, be isolated out of the community and not have good self-esteem. This is, one of the most important things that we can do. Now, people that are listening to this might be thinking, hey, my kids are cool. We're going to talk about what you can do to make sure they stay protected and what behaviours and things that you can invest in. We also have a shared responsibility to think about all of these kids. It is not just on the parents. Now, to be a bit more explicit about what developmental trauma is,
Yeah.
have you ever heard of adverse childhood experiences?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of the research that was done in this space, and a lot of my colleagues have contributed to it as well, shows that one of the most debilitating factors that a child can experience is what's called an adverse childhood experience. There's 3 categories of them.
Give them to me.
There's abuse, which is physical, emotional, and sexual.
Yep.
There's neglect, which is physical and emotional. You understand the difference between that?
Neglect is ignoring.
Yeah, so that's emotional neglect.
Yeah.
Physical neglect is I don't give you the things that you need physically in the world. Warmth, nutrition. all
Gotcha.
those things. Emotional
All right.
neglect is I don't engage with you, I don't respond when you're struggling, and all those things.
Gotcha.
The third category is household dysfunction.
What's that look like?
So that is parental mental illness. That's family conflict. It's violence. It's, dysfunctional divorce and separation.
So not necessarily directed at like the kid or the person, but it happens around them.
No, great question.
Because the first one feels
trauma
like
developmental trauma does not have to be experienced directly to you.
Yeah.
And it is almost as bad when it's someone that is a primary caregiver of you.
Yeah, yeah. That was my point. So the first one when you were saying it's either physical, mental, or emotional abuse, but then it's like watching that with someone else, which is the household. So household abuse.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what it really speaks to is it's a risk to safety. So it's a risk to the safety of that child or that individual that says my stress needs to fire.
Yep.
I need my body to fire to protect me.
Yeah, so there's no good base. Someone experienced it, there's no base. Like you want to call it Bali. You go to that safe space. Not Bali, the place, you're growing up, it's like a safe space. When you're playing Tiggy, you go to Bali, you go to that spot where it's safe. I'm safe in this space.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a really good description. Of
Sorry, Bali when you play Tiggy.
Yeah,
sorry,
totally.
that's what I meant.
I know what you mean, but because that's
island.
that's what a lot of the evidence would show is that the safe harbour is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm
especially
trying
in early
to get.
life. But the beautiful thing about this stuff is I think people worry. One of the things I get frustrated by is people will say, well, if you're doomed if you don't sort this out the first 3 years. Some people say the first 5 years. Some people say the first 6 years. But what the evidence shows us is that you can find pathways to repair. And we'll talk about what that is for some of the kids that might have experienced this, like this kid I'm seeing in clinic.
Can I ask some questions?
Yeah, give them to me.
So is it like a sustained period that causes developmental trauma? Because not making light of this, I have moments where I'll yell or I won't engage because they're upset and I'm just ignoring them. Not, just kind of a little bit, not long term, but be that moment where I'm got the pot on or something and the kid's crying in the kitchen. I can't deal with this right now, that sort of thing, and I'm like, is it months on end? Is it weeks on end, hours on end, minutes on end? What causes developmental trauma?
Yeah, amazing question. So there's 2 types. There's acute trauma, which is the car crash.
Gotcha.
Something really bad happens.
Nuclear something goes nuclear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Stress goes off the charts.
Through the roof, yeah.
You just bang. A lot of the evidence was done on September 11 with these kids and all this stuff.
Gotcha. Yep.
It's a beautiful story, actually, in a book, just segueing quickly. For people who want to learn about this, one of the best books ever written about it is a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And this amazing, world leader in this space talks about how he went to his friend's house who lived right near September 11, and this little kid watched September 11 happen. And the next day, he did a drawing. And a lot of what we do with kids in clinic is get them to draw because that creative outlet of what their experiences are. And the drawing, was horrifying, but there was this little black circle at the bottom of the building. And the reason the black circle was there was, I think the kid said it was a trampoline, but it was to save everyone. Now, your question speaks to that. What we want kids to know is there's a safety net. Now, you create that. You've created that. And that's why you cracking it, yelling, getting upset, ignoring them. The safety net is all the times you've done the different thing. But it's actually important, as we've spoken about in previous episodes, that you don't parent perfectly. And it's quite amazing. A lot of the guys that built that evidence, Winnicott, Bowlby, and all those guys were like a lot of authors, actually. I remember talking to your partner's mum about this, were these upper class white men that went away to boarding school at a very young age and had fractured attachment, and then they did all that evidence. And that's why I probably do what I do. I'm spending my time in clinic looking for my child version of myself.
Yeah.
But, you know, like a lot of us that go into these professions have had these experiences. So your question about like, how do I make sure that that's not happening, is that you just reflect on it. And you give yourself a break and say there are going to be times where I struggle and that I can't be the best parent, but that's actually fine. And that's Winnicott's good enough parenting.
Good enough.
It's because you make sure that the safety net is there.
Yep.
So you go, most of the time, 60% of the time, I'm predictable, I'm responsive, I'm here, and I'm constantly working on my own mental health and thinking how I can be the best version of myself across everything I do, not just as a parent.
Predictable and responsible. They're good things to aim for.
Yeah, really predictable and responsible. Especially that's so much of, I'm sure we're going to get asked about this, but trauma-informed practice understands that environments and relationships need to be predictable and responsible.
Gotcha.
So what does, sorry, you've probably got other questions.
No, go.
So why is Batman, what's happened to him?
His parents are killed in front of him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hugely traumatizing.
Huge.
Now, where was his safety net?
Alfred?
Yeah, Alfred's the protective factor, and Lucius a bit too.
Yeah. Yeah, because he can trust them. He's got few people he can trust with his big secret, I guess, and he trusts Lucius straight away. And obviously, Alfred's his.
And was he enough? Was Alfred enough?
Maybe not. I mean, it wasn't enough to. No, probably no. It wasn't.
Was he?
No,
it's not a criticism of Alfred. Alfred's amazing, but he wasn't enough because even the relationship, with Katie Holmes's character, he loses her, doesn't he? I've just forgotten her name. Is it Rachel?
Rachel.
You know that scene where he's driving and she's been poisoned?
Yep.
And he's like flying the Batmobile.
Yeah.
She was like, they spent millions building that car.
Good.
Real thing.
Good spend.
Really could jump.
Good
Could do all
spend.
that stuff.
It's
Isn't it
amazing.
amazing? That scene going through the Batcave is real.
It's amazing.
I often think about that when I'm driving Evie home and trying her not to fall asleep in the back car. I'm like, Rachel, Evie, stay awake. And then I pull into the car and get her out of the car. So,
Exactly. I pull in like halfway home and revive them.
yeah, I seriously think about
Seriously
every time
do?
I'm doing that drive, I think about that scene. I'm like, Rachel, because I love this movie so much. I think it's the best
so
Batman movie.
real.
But yeah, it's a really good point, mate, of like, this is not about don't do it perfectly or never do that. And yeah, I'm not, sometimes I'll tell the story of my mum and sometimes people will be a bit, that sounds pretty bad, but she didn't have a better skill set. There was no one there to support her and guide her. She didn't have support in her own mental health. There was household dysfunction, like all of that stuff. And I think we know better now and families deserve better now. It's not on families. I saw a kid yesterday, a gorgeous kid in early primary school. This family had been waiting 18 months to see us and they called up and said, we're really desperate. And so the amazing team said, I had a cancellation at the end of my day on just the last minute because the family needed to move the appointment. And they said, come in. And I got to be honest, when I got the message, I was like, man, I really just want to get home and see my family. But then these three gorgeous kids walked in and a family that were having a really tough time and I forgot about it. And I just got the privilege of meeting this amazing family that are having a really tough time. Now, this huge dad at the end of it, I was like, enormous guy. And he turns to me and says, I got a question for you. And I go, yeah, hit me. Like, what is it? Because, I put a lot of effort into like how do I build trust, in the relationship with the families that come in? Because a lot of families have had really negative experiences with services, either taking their kids away or whatever. So, I put a lot of effort into that. But this dad says, I got a question for you. How come when I smack him, when he hasn't listened to me for days, he cowers every time I enter the room. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
It makes you feel really uncomfortable, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know what to say next, to be honest.
Yeah.
You're like,
So
what do you think? I'm like, I don't know.
I know what to say to him because I've thought about this a lot. I've spent a lot of time in the research, and I know a lot of families that is the best they've got. Now, people might be critical of hearing that dad's story, but who took ownership of teaching him anything different? No one did. That would have been the way he was brought up, and it's going to keep cycling. But because I've met that kid in clinic and that dad has felt open and safe enough to ask me that question, we can talk about it. And I can say, it feels awful for you, it feels awful for him, and it's going to make things worse. That's what all the longitudinal data shows us. But I can give him something better, and I can learn with him what works better.
What'd you give him?
We talked about a lot of the stuff, if you only go back to one episode on this, like this is weaved through almost all of our episodes, it's the co-regulation app, you know, and I stepped through it with him and said, every time that happens and you feel like that, you've got to check yourself first before you go to him. We talked about what that looks like. If you're calm, your role is to go in and calm him and then guide him towards what you want him doing. The kind of consequence, punishment stuff doesn't work, but no one's shown him that. So you and I would be doing that if that's all we knew. But we pretend that we're better parents than him because we're not doing that. But actually no one's shown us. No one's shown him. We got shown different stuff. Do you know what I mean? And this is what this podcast is trying to do, is how do we have safe and honest conversations about this and then guide us towards it? And they're there help seeking. They've waited 18 months to get help with this kid who's really struggling, and they're coming from hours away to come and see me at the drop of a hat to get help with it. You know, so that's what we've got to realise, is that we can do better than this collectively. And we'll talk to kind of what that looks like in depth. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, just curious. Was Dad open to it? Was he surprised? Did he like to learn it? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because if I'm being 100% honest, I was like, God, I don't know if I got your trust yet.
Yep.
I don't know if I can do it yet. But I gave it a chance and I was gentle about it. And I was, you know, honest and open, and we had a conversation where we came to a shared understanding of what I was talking about.
Yeah, you got it
through. Yeah, but I'm going to get to, that's not a one and done. I'm going to journey with that kid as long as he needs me to, you know, and I've got a parent that's coming a long way, waiting a long time to think about how he can do it better.
It's good.
Which is amazing.
Yep.
But a huge privilege. But most people that are experiencing that won't get to see anyone in clinic. Most kids, so 1 in 7 kids in Australia from 4 to 17 years of age has a mental illness. All of the best data we have shows it's getting worse. We need to do better with this. One of the biggest risk factors is developmental trauma. One of the most detrimental things that can happen to kids and for families is this stuff. We can't avoid it, and we'll see if it comes up in the questions. I won't talk to it now, but this is where resilience gets butchered, because people don't realise that resilience is very malleable. It moves all the time, but resilience is not about mindfulness. Resilience is a lot more complex than that. And we might hold it for the questions if it comes through. Otherwise, we'll do it in a future topic. But yeah, so I think maybe let's go to the scene.
Sure.
Set the scene. He hasn't become Batman yet. So he has come back from Princeton. He's been given the boot. So, and he's walking through the manor with Alfred. And on our YouTube, you'll actually be able to see the clip on our socials, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so let's play it out, and then we'll talk about what that means in the setting of developmental trauma.
Epic.
Will you be heading back to Princeton after the hearing, sir, or can I persuade you to stay on for a day or two?
I'm not heading back at all.
You don't like it, eh?
I like it fine. I just don't feel the same way.
I prepared the master bedroom.
No. My room will be fine.
With all due respect, sir, Wayne Manor is your house.
No, Alfred, it's my father's house.
Your father is dead,
Now, this
Master Wayne.
place is a mausoleum. If I have my way, I'll pull the damn thing down brick by brick.
This house, Master Wayne, has sheltered 6 generations of your family.
Why do you give a damn, Alfred? It's not your family.
I give a damn because a good man once made me responsible for what was most precious to him. in our world. Miss Dawes has offered to drive you to the hearing. She probably hopes to talk you out of going.
Should I just bury the past out there with my parents, Alfred?
I wouldn't presume to tell you what to do with your past, sir. Just know that there are those of us who care about what you do with your future.
Haven't given up on me yet.
Never.
What do you think?
Love Michael Caine. So good. Never.
Yeah.
Great scene.
Why doesn't he want to sleep? Why does he want to sleep in his old bedroom? In this setting?
I'm out of my jurisdiction here, but like he really enjoyed it. Probably parts of his childhood, his early childhood or something like that, and doesn't want to try and fill the boots of his parents. I don't know. I'm just quiet on this one. What?
He's still a kid. So
He's still stuck at that point.
Yeah. He's still stuck.
He's still stuck at that point, isn't he? Yeah. You talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
Like people get stuck developmentally at a point where there's something really bad or a trauma, and if they're not, you got to go back to there to fix, assist the problem.
Yeah, well done. It's amazing. So yeah, he's still a kid, and he needs to be treated like that. And I was very lucky on my recent fellowship that I got to spend time with Bruce Perry, who is one of the world leading experts in this. That trauma fractures development and pauses it and halts it.
Yeah,
and it stalls it. And he's when his parents were killed, it froze his development, especially his emotional development. We also see his social development is frozen. His emotional regulation is frozen at a little kid's age, and he has no guidance because he actually didn't stay with Alfred. He went off to Princeton. He left. We don't see what happened, but he didn't have nurturing relationships to guide him through all of that trauma and address his developmental needs where they were at, not the age. We also know that trauma, abuse, neglect just stunts brain growth. And that was Perry again. Like kids who have experienced this, their brain is smaller. So it stunts brain growth. Gotcha. This chronic stress that floods them, it stunts it. So those two different, I obviously went off on a tangent, the two different types of trauma, the acute, very traumatic thing is bad. What is worse is continual smaller doses of trauma, such as bullying, such as household dysfunction, such as neglect, because it destroys healthy brain development. And what we see in Batman is he's become someone who looks for threat everywhere. He's constantly threat seeking and he's constantly going into fight mode. And a lot of the kids that I see, my favorite kids to see in clinic are kids with behavioral problems because the gain is so much. And often we make the mistake of saying it's probably ADHD, might be autism, might be anxiety.
Okay.
There's 3 reasons we stuff that up and we need to be careful.
Go on.
The first one is a lot of those things will look like they're ADHD or autism or anxiety, but it's actually trauma. If you don't look people in the face and understand their social expressions, people might say, well, that's a feature of autism. Traumatized kids will do that.
Yeah.
Because there's risk in it and they haven't been taught how to do it.
Yeah.
Kids who are impulsive and hyperreactive, it might be because they're constantly threat seeking. The kid in the classroom who throws the chair across the room or gets distressed and shouts out, it might look like ADHD, but kids with trauma and adults with trauma want predictability and they want a response and they want to connect. So all of us, this is why this has come off the back of the social skills episode, all of us are built to connect. And a lot of kids who are traumatized are throwing up flares to say, I don't care if it's bad, I need connection, I need response. That's why these kids find each other.
Gotcha.
I still remember this preppy who was like, came living in his granddad's caravan. Really bad stuff. You know, the one mate he had was a 17-year-old who hadn't been in school for like 5 years, didn't have another mate, and they just found each other because they wanted social connection. I know that's why all these kids find each other. And we have, without soapbox, I've probably soapboxed too much already, This is all these kids that are out there running around doing antisocial behaviour, and we come down on them and say, where's the punishment, where's the consequence? What we should be going back to and saying is, how do we bring them up better and how do we support their families and build the village and address their developmental trauma and their safety and security needs? And we do that together. We don't expect the parents to do it on their own because it's multi-generational. These parents have all had that experience for them. And so that's how we make our community stronger.
So just as a parent, right, how do I do it? As a person, I'm part of a community. So not just as a parent, right? But like this podcast is for everyone, teachers, doctors, GPs, you know, everyone working in and around the services, like we're saying, and also for parents, large majority of who listens to this. What do we do? Like, what can we do with this? So as in,
so what happens in the second part of the clip?
Rachel picks him up.
Sorry, in the audio we played.
After
Alfred cracks it and says, I don't want to sleep in parents' bedroom. I want to tear it down, which is a common thing in kids with developmental trauma. I just want to tear everything down.
Yeah. Alfred explains that.
He says, should I just bury the past? What does Alfred say to that?
Says, no, because we care about your future. Something like that.
Yeah.
Is that right? Does he say something else?
Yes.
Sorry.
And then he says, no. So he says, you expect me to just bury my past. And we have to acknowledge the trauma that has happened to these kids and these families.
Yeah.
The next step is where the pathway of what we all do, especially parents, is he says, no, but I care about your future. And he says, you still haven't given up on me. And he says, I never will. That's what we do as parents.
Yep.
It's unconditional positive regard. It's I'm here no matter what comes. It's that Lord of the Rings scene. Whatever comes through that door, we're together. You know, when the orc is coming through or something. Sorry, I shouldn't change movies. But we are unconditionally in partnership of whatever we are doing. Now, the interesting research, and this is where the hope is specifically, is around positive childhood experiences as an antidote and a protective factor against kids who might experience trauma.
What are positive childhood experiences?
Yeah, so there's a number of them.
Okay, well, we can do it in the next episode.
No, let's do it now.
What are they?
They are feeling like you can talk to your family about your feelings.
Okay.
Feeling like you have a role in community traditions.
Yeah.
Feeling like you're an active participant in your school group.
Okay.
Feeling like you have friends that care about you.
Gotcha.
Feeling like someone in your home keeps you safe.
Okay.
And having 2 non-parental adults that take a genuine interest in you.
God, that's why you're always like, the footy coach or the or the uncle or the
Most powerful.
How do you remember all those things? You do it every day. Yeah, okay. Sorry. I just am like, you've got no notes. Sorry.
Yeah, well, God, it's 72
I
episodes.
can't remind you, you're very good at this. You're very, very good.
No, but it's, sorry.
I don't know how you sit on everything else. God.
Yeah, well, to be honest, the movie trivia is the stuff that I have to practice. But
okay.
But there's the pathway.
Okay. So they're your proxies. If you're doing those well, you're likely to be sort of.
So that's why Freddie and Ronnie are okay when you don't have time.
To
be the best parent you can be.
Whenever you do these episodes, I come in going, you bring yourself into this episode, like you clearly have, and I don't know how much you want to talk about that in this part or the next part.
Well, you know what I'm like, mate.
Open book. Open. Gotcha. Yep. Oh yeah, and your line about don't want to make it about me. No one thinks you're making it about you. This is just
it is. A lot of this is about me. Like, do you know what I mean? A lot of this is about me. Like I'm trying to do is bring like a lot of training, you know, into the space, but in a way that's practical, which is what you've done beautifully this episode, as you always do. What does that actually mean? How do I do things differently?
Yeah, but it sounds like you got more like learned experience, frankly.
Yeah, I've got lived experience with stuff just because, of my childhood and, you know, it's, but that was, that has informed what I do, but it shows.
Clearly.
Like I always feel like I don't want to tell the story of like I walked, 10 miles uphill both ways through the snow to school, playing this tiny violin. But the beautiful thing I think about hearing stories from people like that is it shows there's hope, not all is lost. And I get sick of hearing that like, there isn't a way to change this. I heard something recently in the media where someone who has no training at all said kids are going to be who they are regardless of what you do. And then they said twin studies have shown us that. And I was like, It showed us the opposite. But this person's quoting it on a huge platform saying it doesn't matter what you do. It hugely matters what you do. I have the privilege of meeting kids where almost everyone but the family has given up hope. I met a kid yesterday who has had all of this awful stuff happen. He's a gorgeous kid. And do you know who his most protective factor in his life is?
His teacher?
It's his social worker. He's got this social worker that just rolls around with him. It's quite funny though, because we're trying to get him into, like, he's been kicked out of school. We're trying to get him into some other pathways, and every bit of advice I give him, I can't say the guy's name, but he's like, I'll have to check with that guy. And I'm like, man, I've been doing this for so long. Have some faith in me. But he's like, I've got to run it past that guy.
Yeah. Well, he's got some trust. It's good. He's trusting someone. He's awesome.
One of those non-parental adults that takes a genuine interest in him. And if I had to choose between me and that guy wins every time.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to pick which one will stay journeying with him, but that guy wins every time.
Yep.
And that's what's important, and that's what the evidence shows us. And we can do this. How do we make sure our kids feel like they can come to us and talk about their feelings?
Yep.
We earn that now. The teenager that's not comfortable doing it, you earn it back. How do we find the two non-parental adults that take a genuine interest in our kids? How do we give them an opportunity to participate in community traditions?
Yeah, I like
Those
that.
will protect them. And we don't force kids to become scouts if they don't want to, but we're led by them, and then we give them opportunities.
I am doubling down on Halloween, which is in less than 2 weeks. Doubling down.
Yeah, that's the
Sorry,
beautiful.
we don't like timestamping anything, but I'm like, far out community traditions.
Yeah, but it's a really important thing that we need to put effort into. And, you know, the other thing this speaks to is how important our own mental health is. I've constantly reiterated that through the podcast, but the hardest thing I ever do in clinic is get parents to realise they have to be selfish and prioritise their own mental health.
Got to be calm heading into a situation.
Yeah, you're amazing about this. You guys have gone through tough times and you had an amazing experience going and getting help.
The best.
Yeah.
It's the best money I've ever spent.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It really is.
I've done it heaps as well. Sometimes people will be like, Billy, I think you need to, you know, address your childhood stuff. I was like, I've seen a lot of, I've seen a lot of therapists to do. And you've supported me. Like, Annalise is my Alfred. You know what I mean?
Yep.
She's a bit more intimate than Bruce and Alfred, but she is my unquestionably supportive person. But you know, you have been that for me too. Over the last couple of years, I've gone through some pretty horrific developmental trauma, like childhood stuff coming back up and all these things. And we have to put effort into those resources and relationships. The hardest thing about life, I think, is that relationships can hurt us so much, but they can also heal us.
Yeah.
And that's what we see, is that what we wish is that Bruce Wayne would show who he really is in his relationships, and there would be investment into those with Rachel, with Alfred, with Lucius. But he's in such a fight response, like so many of the kids we see, that he stays in the Batman persona, which is his true persona. But he's never given a pathway to go back to his childhood, address the trauma he's experienced, and build nurturing, predictable relationships through that.
Okay, got one last question. Serious question. Whenever you go through these scripts, I always wonder, do you think it's deliberately written? Do you reckon they deliberately write it like this so it is so developmentally on point? Or do you reckon people just write scripts? Do you reckon there's someone there with like a psychiatric eye?
Well, I mean, yeah, we've got a background story about some of the content that goes out that doesn't have any.
Yeah, for every Batman, it's like a Billy Madison. We've done everything right.
Yeah,
But,
so I spend a lot of time. I'm very on the fly, try and give you at least a few days to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Because I'm on the fly doing this. But I remember someone was like, Blade Runner's not about neurodiversity. What are you talking about? I was like, go and listen to the episode.
Yeah.
Don't just comment on the social
That's
post. But, but what I'm trying to do is convey the cultural influence that this had on us. Yeah. And I think we can all see in Batman this traumatized kid. But I don't think Nolan, Kane and Finger wrote him as like, this is developmental trauma. I just think it's so common. This is 1 in 5 Australian kids will experience 3 or more adverse childhood experiences in their life. Almost every kid I see in clinic is at risk or has had developmental trauma. probably most parents that I have in their own childhood experience have.
Yep.
The reason movies are here is because this is another influence on us.
Totally.
You know? And some people are like, I wonder why that podcast does well. And often are like, oh, it must be the movie thing. I'm like, I hope it's also the chemistry and our genuine friendship and the evidence is actually being translated.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you know, that kind of idea. So no, I don't think the guys wrote Batman as a story for that reason. It's that kind of, it's what I reckon that the actual.
Is it informed? I guess is my question.
No, I don't think it's informed. I think it's
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it's that kind of hero's journey of like overcome all odds and became a crime stopper, which is bullshit because we don't want that in our kids.
No, we don't.
We don't want our kids to take their trauma and go out
channel it.
Yeah, and channel it. And he hasn't found a way to have his mental health needs met.
Yeah.
And he never does. Like, it's, don't get me wrong, this movie. So the classic quote, why do we fall? What's the answer that Batman gives that? Why do Alfred gives?
Dust ourselves off and get up again?
Yeah, so we can learn to pick ourselves up again. That's bullshit. I don't agree with that. We fall in childhood so someone can teach us how to get back up again.
Okay. Teach. Yes, teach.
But not, you know, there's this thing about resilience, that grit and all that stuff is kids should lift themselves up out of the dirt mentally and physically. That's not true.
No, because we saw that with Braveheart. Didn't help. He just kept running around the Highlands.
Well, then you become an adult that's dysfunctional and antisocial and not connected and has low self-esteem and is aggressive and hostile.
As an 8, and they're still stuck as an 8-year-old.
Yeah, and that's a lot of men rolling around at the moment who are prone to physicality and aggression and violence or withdraw. And they were kids that had a pathway to not go down that route and no one showed them.
Yep.
No one taught their parents, helped them, whatever.
Yep. Well, Billy, no jokes. Honestly, you should be in like some sort of script writing with all this knowledge because you develop some amazing characters.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Anyway, just thought I'd give you that compliment. Giving you a couple of compliments this episode. But this has been fascinating. It's an area that I actually understood more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I don't think I've got a huge amount of learned experience or lived experience, but I understand it now. But I can see the pitfalls and I can see some of the challenges that are before me every day to avoid. But I did love the 6 tips on how we make it a positive experience for our kids as well that are in there. So it's awesome.
Questions, please send them in. The trickier, the better. Tricky
questions. I think it's going to be a long episode. The second part, there's going to be a lot of complex questions, I think, which is fine. People know that now and you listen to us. The second part of the episode is where you get to ask your questions for Billy. So send them through via popcultureparenting@gmail or via Instagram, or just jump into the questions when you see them in the stories in the next couple of weeks. Make sure you get them in. Don't hesitate asking, because once we record the episode, it's a little bit hard to get back to answering that question. So just make sure once you listen to these guys that you just sort of pen those questions, pop them in. But yeah, really excited for the next episode. Be a little bit nervous, to be honest. I know we're going to get some pretty interesting notes from people, powerful notes, I imagine. But loved learning about it. So thank you very much, Dr. Billy. And thanks very much to AB1 guys. This is amazing, this setup. I'm thrilled, and hopefully they can do some post-production work to make me look a little bit younger. Have a cheek lift, boys. Boys and girls. Anyway, we'll do our best. Thanks, Billy.
Thanks, Nick.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. And I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.